Blood splattered across the white tile as laughter echoed down the hallway. A dozen phones were raised, capturing every second, every cruel word, every trembling breath. Her backpack lay torn open, books scattered like the pieces of her dignity. "Don't touch her, she's contagious." One of them shouted, their voice shrilled with false bravery. The others joined in, chanting, mocking, feeding off the pain of a girl who could barely stand. Her name was Ariana Lewis, and she was dying. But what none of them knew, what not even her teachers dared to imagine, was who her mother really was. Behind the school gates, a black SUV idled silently. Inside, a woman in civilian clothes watched the chaos unfold on her phone screen, her expression unreadable. She'd seen combat zones, hostage rescues, the worst faces of humanity. Yet nothing prepared her for the sight of her little girl being broken by laughter. She took a slow breath, steady and controlled. Years of military training had taught her patience. Discipline and vengeance measured, not reckless. The kids thought they'd found an easy target. They didn't know they had just started a war, because when you've survived battlefields and buried comrades, is one thing you never, ever do. You never mess with a Navy SEAL's child. By the end of this story, you'll understand why every single one of those bullies wished they had never pressed record, before the cruel laughter and flashing phones. Ariana Lewis had been a quiet light in a small corner of Atlanta. She was 12, small for her age, with deep brown eyes that always looked like they were searching for something. Maybe a future she wasn't sure she'd get to see. Every morning, her mother, Sergeant Maya Lewis, helped her braid her hair. Maya's hands were steady, the same hands that once gripped rifles and guided soldiers through foreign deserts. Ariana would hum softly, always the same song, "Lean on Me," as the smell of warm oatmeal filled their small kitchen. It was their ritual, their promise of normalcy in a life that had been anything but normal. Ariana had been diagnosed a year ago. The doctors used long words that Maya never repeated out loud. Ariana only understood one thing, that some days she could run, and others, she couldn't even climb the stairs. But she didn't cry. She painted. Her room was a gallery of color, swirling skies, strong brown women, oceans that looked endless. She wanted to be an artist. "I don't want to be remembered for being sick," she once told her mom. "I want people to remember my colors." At school, though, those colors faded. Kids whispered when she coughed, moved away when she pulled out her inhaler. She wore a scarf, not just because she liked it, but because her hair had begun to thin. Teachers pitied her in silence, and pity, she discovered, could sting almost as much as cruelty. Still, she smiled. Still, she said, "I'm okay," because she'd watched her mother face things that would break most people. Deployments, long nights alone, folded flags. Ariana had inherited that same quiet strength. Maya, on the other hand, lived every day in two worlds. In one, she was a veteran trying to rebuild a peaceful life for her daughter. In the other, she was a soldier who never stopped scanning for threats. She saw the way the other kids looked at Ariana, the subtle cruelty. The way adults ignored it, and every instinct inside her screamed to act. But she didn't. Not yet. She promised herself she would let Ariana fight her own small battles. Learn to stand tall on her own. Courage isn't about fighting back, Maya used to tell her. It's about standing when no one stands with you. But courage, Ariana would learn, could make you a target. The day everything changed started like any other, sunlight through blinds. Oatmeal on the stove, her mother's soft voice reminding her to smile. Ariana had no idea that by the time the sun set, her paintings would be torn, her name trending for all the wrong reasons, and the quiet strength she carried would awaken something far more dangerous in her mother, the part of Maya Lewis, the Navy, once called the Phantom. It started with whispers, the kind that slide through the cracks of a classroom like cold air. At first, Ariana didn't even notice. She was used to being the quiet kid, the one who sat by the window sketching when everyone else was talking about TikTok or basketball. But whispers have a way of growing. By the end of the week, she could feel them. The stares. The soft laughs when she took her medication in class. The sudden silence when she walked by. It was Jade who started it, popular, sharp-tongued, the kind of girl who could ruin someone's life before lunch, and still get applause by dinner. Jade wasn't cruel by nature. She was insecure. Her father had left, her mother worked nights, and she wore confidence like armor. Ariana's quiet strength threatened that. Ariana was different, fragile, yet fearless. And people like Jade didn't know how to handle that kind of power. So, one morning when Ariana's cough echoed during homeroom, Jade rolled her eyes and said, "Girl, are you dying or just trying to get attention?" The class laughed. Not all of them meant to. It was that nervous, uncomfortable kind of laugh, but laughter. Once released, takes on a life of its own. Ariana froze. Her throat burned, her lungs felt heavy. She smiled faintly and whispered, "Sorry." That made them laugh harder. Later that day, someone slipped a note into her locker. It read, "Stay home before you make the rest of us sick." When she showed her mom that night, Maya's jaw clenched, but she stayed calm. "You sure you don't want me to talk to the principal?" she asked. Ariana shook her head. "It's fine, Mom. They'll forget." They didn't forget. The next week, someone created a fake Instagram account called @SickGirlChronicles, posting pictures of Ariana from school blurry, zoomed-in shots of her coughing, sitting alone at lunch, her scarf slipping off her thinning hair. The captions were cruel. "Patient Zero, Quarantine Queen." The posts spread fast. Screens lit up in classrooms. Whispers turned to smirks. Even teachers noticed but said nothing. Nobody wanted to get involved. Maya noticed the shift immediately. Ariana's usual chatter at breakfast faded. Her sketches grew darker, colors replaced by charcoal gray and storm blue. One night, Maya found her daughter sitting in the dark scrolling through her phone. Tears streaked down her cheeks. On the screen was a video, Ariana walking down the hall, tripping over someone's foot, books scattering. Laughter followed. The caption read, "When your cancer walk looks like a zombie crawl." Maya's stomach twisted. Her hands trembled as she took the phone, but her voice stayed level. Years of training forcing control. Who did this? Ariana just shook her head. It doesn't matter. But it did matter. It mattered more than anything. That night, when Ariana finally fell asleep, Maya sat in the kitchen, staring at the video replaying on her phone. Her pulse slowed. Her breathing steadied. Old instincts began to stir, the ones she had buried deep. The rhythm of assessment, observation, strategy. She opened her laptop. Within minutes, she found the IP linked to the Instagram account, Old Habits Die Hard. She didn't need to be in uniform to investigate. The next morning, she went to the school, phone in hand, demanding to see the principal. But Principal Harris only offered a polite smile and a rehearsed apology. "We understand your frustration, Ms. Lewis, but kids can be unkind. I'm sure it'll pass." "We can't prove who made the account." Maya's voice dropped, cold and deliberate. "You don't want to know who I used to be, Mr. Harris? Because if you did, you'd understand that I don't wait for proof." He blinked, confused by the edge in her tone. Maya forced a smile, thanked him for his time, and left. At school, things got worse. Jade and her friends escalated from words to pranks. They filled Ariana's locker with tissues. They sprayed her desk with disinfectant before sitting near her. Someone even drew a skull on her chair with the word "expired." Ariana stopped eating lunch in the cafeteria. She started drawing outside under the bleachers instead. Where the wind drowned out the laughter, her mother noticed the change in her posture. The way she avoided mirrors, how her sketchbooks now showed faceless figures standing alone. One evening, as Maya tucked her in, Ariana whispered, "Mom, why do people hate what they don't understand?" Maya froze. Her throat tightened. "They're afraid, baby. Fear makes people mean. Were you ever afraid?" "Every day," Maya said softly, "but I never let fear make me cruel." After Ariana slept, Maya stood by the window, watching the streetlights flicker. In her head, old voices echoed her commanding officer, her training drills, her oath. She had sworn never to use those skills again, never to bring that part of herself home. But now, watching her daughter break under the weight of other people's hate, she felt that part of her stirring again. The soldier, the strategist. The protector. She opened her drawer and pulled out an old, worn photograph. Her Navy team, smiling in the sand, the word SEAL Team 6 faintly visible on the edge of a flag behind them. She traced her finger over the faces, whispering, "I thought I left the battlefield behind." Her phone buzzed. Another notification, another cruel comment under the fake account. This time, she didn't flinch. She saved the post. Saved every username. Every comment. Every emoji. Then she whispered, "Fine. You want a war? You just picked the wrong mother." Outside, thunder rolled through the night, slow, deliberate, and distant, as if the storm itself was waiting for her command. The days that followed blurred together like a bad dream Ariana couldn't wake up from. Each morning, she forced herself to get out of bed, to smile for her mother, to act like the world wasn't closing in on her. But the laughter in the hallways grew louder. The cruel posts spread faster. What had started as teasing had now turned into a full-blown campaign of humiliation, and the entire school seemed to be watching it unfold like it was entertainment. The fake Instagram page wasn't just mocking her anymore. It was evolving. The bullies began sharing edited photos, Ariana's face pasted onto hospital beds, gravestones, memes that said things like "rip before finals" and "she's already halfway gone." The cruelty was creative, relentless, and deeply personal. Someone even hacked into her art blog and replaced her paintings with drawings of skeletons and syringes. Ariana deleted the app, but it didn't help. The laughter still followed her in the halls. The whispers still echoed. She could feel eyes on her every second she walked through school. Teachers saw what was happening, but no one stepped in. One of them, Mr. Connolly, pulled her aside once and said quietly, "Just ignore them, Ariana. Don't give them power." But ignoring hate doesn't make it disappear. It just teaches the hateful they can get away with it. Her only friend, Lena, began to drift away too. Lena had been with her since elementary school. They'd shared secrets, lunches, and late-night dreams about high school life. But lately, Lena was avoiding her, glancing nervously around whenever Ariana sat next to her. One afternoon at lunch, when Ariana walked up with her tray, Lena looked at her and whispered, "I'm sorry, Ari. I just can't. Everyone's saying stuff about you. I don't want to get dragged into it." The words stung worse than any insult. Ariana just nodded, pretending she understood. She walked to the far end of the cafeteria, sat alone, and stared at her untouched food while the noise around her swallowed her whole. That night, when Maya asked how her day had gone, Ariana smiled and said, "It was fine." She'd gotten good at lying. But Maya saw the cracks, the forced grin, the slumped shoulders. The long silences. Maya knew the signs of someone trying to stay strong. She'd seen it in soldiers who were barely holding it together on the battlefield, that fragile calm before a breakdown. And every fiber of her being screamed at her to step in, to take control, to protect her daughter by any means necessary. But she also knew how fragile Ariana's sense of independence was. She didn't want to smother her or make her feel weaker than the bullies already did. So Maya waited, watched, collected information. She began driving Ariana to school earlier, parking at a distance to observe the group of kids who hung out by the gates, Jade and her clique, loud and smug. Maya noticed how they looked at Ariana, how they laughed when she walked by. Her mind cataloged every face, every license plate, every small detail. The soldier in her was awake now, whether she liked it or not. Then came the hospital visit. It was supposed to be a routine checkup, just another in a long line of treatments and blood tests. But Ariana's body was tired, weaker than before. The doctor's words were gentle but heavy. "We might need to start preparing for the next stage." Ariana stared at the floor, her hands clenched in her lap. Maya sat beside her, every muscle in her body tight, her jaw locked to keep from breaking down. She didn't cry. She didn't even blink. She'd learned long ago that tears didn't solve problems, action did. When they left the hospital, Ariana was quiet. The car ride home was long and silent. The only sound the hum of the tires against the wet road. As they pulled into their driveway, Ariana finally whispered, "Mom, am I dying?" Maya turned off the engine and looked at her daughter. For a moment, the soldier disappeared, and only the mother remained. "Not today," she said softly, "and not without a fight." Ariana nodded, but her eyes were distant. "Then why does it feel like I already lost?" That night, as Ariana slept, Maya sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through the cruel posts again. Her hands didn't shake anymore. She had already accepted what she had to do. She opened an old chest in her closet, a small metal military case she hadn't touched in years. Inside were memories of a life she'd buried, a sealed trident, old field maps, a folded flag, and a photo of her unit, labeled Task Force Phantom. She touched the insignia with trembling fingers, whispering to herself, "You promised you'd never go back to that life." The promises were easy when your child wasn't being destroyed in front of you. The next day, she made an appointment with the school under the pretense of volunteering for the parent board. Instead, she studied the layout of the campus, camera placements, hall angles, exit routes. She noticed which corners were blind spots, where the bullies gathered between classes, where the teachers rarely looked. Her brain had slipped back into operational mode, observation, analysis, execution. Meanwhile, things at school hit their breaking point. Ariana walked into class one morning to find her seat covered in fake blood ketchup. But the smell made her stomach twist. A piece of paper was taped to the desk. "Rest in peace, Ariana Lewis. 2013 to 2025. The entire class was laughing when she walked in. She froze at the door, her breath catching in her throat. For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, she gathered her books, turned, and walked out. The laughter followed her all the way down the hall. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She just kept walking until she reached the girls' bathroom, locked herself in a stall, and sat down on the floor. She stared at the graffiti on the door, names, insults, doodles, and then took out her sketchbook. On a clean page, she drew a girl standing in the rain, surrounded by faceless shadows. The girl was small, fragile, but her eyes burned with fire. When she got home that day, Maya was waiting. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. She had already seen the video of the prank circulating online. One of the teachers had forwarded it to her anonymously. That night, Maya stood in front of her bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection. She barely recognized the woman looking back. Not the calm mother she tried to be, but the soldier she once was. Her jaw was clenched, her eyes hard. The kind of eyes that once stared down terrorists and didn't flinch. She opened the mirror cabinet and pulled out a small, sealed envelope. Inside was a folded piece of paper, a list of names and contact numbers she hoped she'd never need again. Former teammates, analysts, quiet professionals who owed her favors. She dialed one number. It rang twice before a voice answered, deep and familiar. "Maya? Haven't heard that name in a while. It's not a social call," she said. A pause. "What's wrong?" "They hurt my daughter." The voice on the other end went quiet. "Then what do you need?" "I don't know yet," she said. "But I'm going to find out everything about these kids, their parents, their digital footprints, their connections. And when I'm done, I'll make sure they understand what real accountability feels like." "Careful," the voice warned. "You're not on the battlefield anymore." She hung up without answering. That weekend, Maya followed Jade after school, discreet, at a distance. Years of covert ops had taught her how to disappear in plain sight. She watched Jade meet up with her friends at a cafe, laughing like she hadn't just destroyed a child's self-worth. Maya took photos, log details, license plates, routine routes, everything. But even as she planned, part of her hesitated. She didn't want revenge. She wanted justice. She wanted her daughter's peace of mind restored, not blood on her conscience. Still, there was one undeniable truth. The school had failed her. The system had failed her. And the only person who could protect Ariana now was herself. That night, as thunder rolled outside again, Maya sat beside her daughter's bed. Brushing a strand of hair from her forehead, Ariana was asleep, her breathing soft, the pale glow of her nightlight painting her face in gold. Maya whispered, I promised I'd keep you safe, and I never break my promises." In that moment, she knew there was no going back. The switch had flipped. The soldier was awake by morning. She was ready. She didn't wear her uniform, but she didn't need to. The mission had already begun. Her first objective: expose the truth. Her second: make them remember her daughter's name not as a victim, but as a fighter. And as she looked out the window at the rising sun, her eyes hardened. She promised herself she'd never go back to that life. The soldier inside her whispered. But that night, she broke her promise. Friday mornings at Fairview Middle were usually chaotic chatter, sneakers squeaking, the clang of lockers slamming shut. But this one felt different. There was an eerie buzz in the air, like everyone knew something was coming. And they did. Ariana didn't. She walked into school with her sketchbook tucked under her arm, earbuds in, trying to drown out the noise. She was pale, but determined. She had decided that today she would read her poem at the school assembly. It was about hope, about fighting darkness. Her mother had smiled that morning and said, "Make them listen, baby, even if they don't want to." But outside in the shadow of the gym, Jade and her friends were huddled over their phones, whispering and laughing. They had planned something bigger than the Instagram page, bigger than the ketchup prank. They called it the Sick Girl Challenge. One of the boys, Troy, had hacked into the school's AV system. Their plan was simple and cruel. During the assembly, while Ariana was on stage, they'd play a video, a cruel mashup of clips from the Instagram account, spliced with distorted audio of Ariana coughing and gasping, a meme video of her suffering, broadcast for the entire school to see. At 10:15 a.m., the auditorium lights dimmed. The principal introduced the student speakers. When Ariana's name was called, a few scattered laughs rippled through the crowd. She ignored them and stepped onto the stage. Her hands trembled as she unfolded her paper. "My name is Ariana Lewis," she began softly, "and this poem is called When the Sun Forgets to Rise." Her voice quivered at first, then steadied. The room quieted. Even the bullies seemed to pause for a moment. They were listening. Her words painted pictures of fear, courage, love, and loss. She spoke of storms that never ended, of hearts that kept beating even when the world forgot them. It was beautiful. And then the screen behind her flickered. The projector switched from the poem. Title to a shaky video, her coughing in class, the ketchup prank, the grave drawing on her desk. Laughter erupted. Someone whistled. Another shouted, "Encore." Ariana froze. The sound of her own pain, twisted into mockery, filled the room. Her knees buckled. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked toward the crowd, faces blurred. A sea of laughter and phone cameras. On the far side of the auditorium, the door opened quietly. Maya Lewis stepped in. She had been standing outside in her SUV, waiting for the assembly to end so she could take Ariana to her next appointment. But then her phone buzzed, a live stream notification. The title made her blood run cold. Sick Girl Live, School Edition. She had clicked it. She had seen everything. Now, she moved like a shadow through the aisles. Silent, controlled. Years of combat training had rewired her body. Every step was precise. Her breathing was steady, heartbeat calm. She didn't rush, she calculated as the video played. She climbed onto the stage, her boots echoing once against the wood. The laughter faltered. Ariana turned and saw her mother, the calm in her eyes, the steel in her posture. "Mom," she whispered brokenly. "It's okay, baby," Maya said softly, taking the microphone. "I got it from here." She turned to the audience. Hundreds of students, teachers, and phones raised, still recording. "You think this is funny?" she said, voice low, carrying effortlessly through the silence. "You think pain is a game? Let me tell you something about games." Her eyes locked on Jade and her friends. "In my world, games have consequences." She held up her phone and pressed play. The projector flickered again. The video changed. Now it showed footage no one had seen before. Security footage, screenshots, private messages, one by one. Names and faces appeared, the creators of the fake account, The people who shared it, the comments they wrote. She had hacked the server herself, traced every IP address, every upload, every repost. The bullies' laughter turned to horror as their messages filled the giant screen behind her. Let's make her cry again tomorrow. Bet she won't last the year. Who even lets her come to school like that? Gasps rippled through the crowd. Teachers froze. Some students lowered their phones. Maya's voice stayed calm. You want to record something? Record this. She gestured to the screen. Record the truth. Jade stood up, her face pale. You can't do that. That's illegal. Maya turned to her, eyes sharp as glass. So is harassment, sweetheart. But you didn't seem too worried about that. The principal scrambled to the stage, stammering, Ms. Lewis, please, we can handle this internally. No. Maya cut in, her tone icy but controlled. You had your chance. You let this happen under your roof. She pointed toward her daughter, who stood trembling, trying not to break. That girl has fought harder to stay alive than anyone in this room ever will. And you let her be destroyed for it. Silence. The kind of silence that hums, electric, heavy. Then, from the back, a student stood. She's right, someone said quietly. Another followed. This isn't okay. Phones dropped. The live stream comments started flooding with messages. This is messed up. I can't believe this happened. Protect Ariana. The tide had turned. Maya took Ariana's hand. You don't have to say anything, baby, she whispered. But Ariana shook her head. She stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear. You all laughed, she said, looking out at the faces she once called classmates. You all watched me fall and thought it was funny. But the truth is, I'm not afraid anymore. You already took everything you could. She paused, and I'm still here. Her words hung in the air like a prayer. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then slowly, a few students began to clap. One by one, more joined in. Not out of pity, out of shame, out of awe, out of the kind of realization that makes your stomach drop. But Maya wasn't done. She turned back to the principal. I've sent every file, every message, every video to the district, the media, and law enforcement. I'll make sure this school answers for what it allowed. Her voice softened. Because my daughter isn't your cautionary tale. She's your wake-up call. The principal nodded, speechless. Maya took the microphone one last time. Her tone changed, quieter now, almost reflective. I served my country for 15 years. I've seen good people die for strangers they didn't even know. And yet in this school, we let children destroy each other while adults look away. She looked at Ariana, then back to the students. That ends today. With that, she handed the mic back and walked off the stage, Ariana beside her. The crowd parted like water, silent, watching. Outside, as the cool air hit them, Ariana finally broke. She collapsed into her mother's arms, sobbing, shaking. Maya held her close, whispering, It's over, baby. You're safe now. But it wasn't just over. It was beginning. By evening, the video of Maya's confrontation had gone viral. Hashtag #StandWithAriana was trending across platforms. News outlets picked up the story. Parents demanded accountability. Jade's parents withdrew her from school. Her friends deleted their social accounts. The administration faced public outrage. Maya hadn't raised her voice once. She hadn't touched a single person. But her precision, her strategy, hit harder than any weapon ever could. And that night, as she sat beside her daughter's bed watching Ariana sleep peacefully for the first time in weeks, Maya finally allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in years. Relief. The war was over, for now. But she also knew something else. Justice doesn't heal wounds. It only stops them from bleeding further. Healing, real healing, would take time. She looked at the photo on Ariana's bedside, the one of the two of them at the beach. Sunlight in their faces, salt in their hair. Maya smiled faintly and whispered, You're stronger than any soldier I ever knew. Downstairs, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It was her old teammate, the one she'd called for help. saw the footage. You handled it perfectly. You didn't need the uniform. You are the uniform. Maya stared at the message, then turned the phone off. She looked out the window at the quiet street. No laughter, no whispers, no cameras. Just peace. In the silence, she let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Because in the end, she hadn't gone back to war. She'd brought the battlefield to justice. And for the first time in a long time, she knew she had finally truly won. The following week, the halls of Fairview Middle felt like a different world. The same lockers, the same faces, the same morning announcements, but a heavy silence hung over everything. The laughter was gone. The cruel whispers had vanished. Everywhere Ariana walked, eyes followed her. Not with mockery now, but with guilt. Her mother's confrontation had exploded online. The video from the assembly had reached millions within days. News outlets called Maya the SEAL mom who fought back. Parents across the country were talking about bullying, about school accountability, about how far was too far. But Maya wasn't interested in fame. She didn't care about interviews or headlines. She cared about one thing: keeping Ariana safe, giving her a chance to breathe again. At home, things were quieter too. Ariana spent more time painting again, soft, hopeful colors this time, blues and golds instead of gray and black. Her energy, however, was fading. The illness was taking more from her each day. Her cough grew deeper, her skin paler. But her spirit, that had never been stronger. Maya noticed how her daughter had changed. Ariana no longer avoided mirrors. She didn't hide her scarf anymore. She smiled more, though the smile was often tired. There was a peace in her now, a kind of acceptance that frightened and comforted Maya all at once. One evening, as Maya was cleaning the kitchen, she heard soft music coming from Ariana's room, a song she hadn't heard in months, "Lean on Me." She walked in and found Ariana sitting by the window, her sketchbook open, painting a sunrise. "Hey, soldier," Maya said gently, smiling. "Haven't heard that song in a while." Ariana looked up. "It felt right," she said, her voice raspy but warm. "I think I'm painting my last one." Maya froze. "What do you mean your last one?" Ariana smiled faintly. "Not forever. Just my last big one. I want it to be perfect. I want people to remember it." Maya sat beside her, heart heavy. "People will remember you, baby. You don't need a painting for that." Ariana shook her head. "No, Mom. I want them to remember my colors, not my sickness." She turned the sketchbook toward her mother. It was a painting of two figures standing on a beach, one tall, one small, holding hands as the sun rose. The taller one wore a navy blue jacket, the other a bright yellow dress. Over them, in neat brushstrokes, Ariana had written, "Not all heroes wear uniforms." Maya felt her throat tighten. She reached for her daughter's hand, and they sat in silence, watching the light fade from the window. A few days later, the school board held an emergency meeting. The superintendent, parents, and local reporters packed into the gym. Maya sat quietly at the back, dressed in civilian clothes, her posture straight. Eyes alert, the same discipline she carried from her service. When it was her turn to speak, she didn't talk about revenge. She talked about responsibility. "I'm not here to ruin anyone's life," she said, her voice steady. "I'm here because my daughter's life was treated like entertainment, because silence from adults, from institutions, lets cruelty grow." Her words carried weight. Even the parents of the bullies looked down, ashamed. The school district promised a new zero-tolerance policy for bullying, mandatory awareness programs, mental health counselors. But for Maya, it wasn't about policies. It was about proof that someone had finally listened. After the meeting, Jade's mother approached her. Her eyes were red, her hands shaking. "Miss Lewis," she said softly, "I don't expect you to forgive what my daughter did. But I need you to know I'm sorry. I didn't know how bad it had gotten." Maya studied the woman for a moment. The guilt, the fear, the pain that only another mother could understand. Then she nodded. "Teach her better. That's all the forgiveness I can give." When she turned to leave, she saw Jade standing near the door, head bowed. She looked nothing like the confident, cruel girl from before. She whispered, "I'm sorry, Miss Lewis, and I'm sorry, Ariana." Maya didn't answer. She simply said, "Then prove it." In the following weeks, the media storm began to die down. Ariana's story had touched hearts, and letters began arriving at their doorstep from parents, teachers, even other kids who had been bullied. Some included small paintings, others drawings, poems, words of encouragement. One letter stood out. It was from a girl in Texas who wrote, "I was going to end my life last month. Then I saw Ariana's video. I realized if she could keep fighting, so could I please tell her thank you for saving me." When Maya read it aloud, Ariana cried quietly. "I didn't save anyone," she said. Maya smiled gently. "Maybe you just reminded her what courage looks like." But courage couldn't stop time. By the end of spring, Ariana's health began to fail faster. The hospital visits grew longer, the medication heavier. She grew thinner, weaker. Yet she never stopped painting, never stopped smiling when her mother walked into the room. One night, when the house was quiet, Ariana called her mother to her bedside. "Mom," she whispered, "promise me something, anything when I'm gone. Don't stop fighting for people like me. Promise me you'll keep telling stories, real ones, so no one ever feels invisible again." Maya felt her heart crack, but she nodded. "I promise." Ariana smiled softly. "Good. Because I think that's what heroes do. They make the world better for people they'll never even meet." That was the last real conversation they had. A week later, as dawn broke, Ariana slipped away quietly, her mother's hand. In hers, the sunlight from her window spilling across the painting she had finished the sunrise. The beach, the two figures holding hands. The funeral was small, but it felt infinite. Students, teachers, neighbors, even strangers came. The church was filled with Ariana's artwork, every wall covered with her colors. Maya spoke briefly, standing at the podium, her uniform folded neatly beside her. "My daughter taught me more about bravery than any battlefield ever could," she said. "She fought with color instead of weapons, with kindness instead of hate, and she won." Her voice broke slightly. "They say soldiers fight for freedom. Ariana fought for dignity, hers and others. And I couldn't be prouder to have been her mother." When she stepped down, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even Jade and her friends were there, holding small flowers, their faces wet with tears. They placed them by the painting of the sunrise, Ariana's final work. After the ceremony, Maya sat alone for a long time, staring at that painting. The colors seemed alive in the morning light, the blue waves, the golden sky. She reached out and traced the brushstrokes with her fingertips. "She didn't fight in vain," a voice said behind her. It was Principal Harris. His tone was softer now, humble. "You were right, Ms. Lewis. We all failed her. Because of her, we'll never fail another child again." Maya nodded but didn't speak. She wasn't looking for redemption from them. She just wanted her daughter's story to live. Months passed. The world moved on, but Ariana's name didn't fade. Her art was displayed in a city exhibit titled "The Colors of Courage." Proceeds. Went to anti-bullying programs and hospitals for terminally ill children. Her poem, "When the Sun Forgets to Rise," was published in an anthology. A quote from her went viral. "Kindness doesn't need strength, it creates it." Maya attended the exhibit quietly, standing in the back, dressed simply. Watched strangers stop in front of her daughter's paintings, their faces softening, their eyes full. A little girl tugged her mother's hand and said, "She's so brave, Mommy. I want to be like her." Maya smiled through her tears. "You already are," she whispered after the exhibit closed. She walked outside into the night. The air was cool, the city quiet. She looked up at the stars, distant, steady, and thought of Ariana. For a moment, she could almost hear her voice, soft and light, saying, "See, Mom? People remember my colors." Maya took a deep breath, her heart both heavy and full. She had spent her life fighting wars that took lives. But her daughter had fought one that gave life hope to others. And as she walked down the empty street, she realized something profound. Her mission wasn't over. Ariana's legacy wasn't meant to end in a painting or a headline. It was meant to live in every story told, every life saved, every act of kindness that came because one girl refused to be broken. She decided that night to start. A foundation, the Ariana Lewis. project dedicated to helping bullied and terminally ill children express themselves through art. If she painted her way through pain, Maya said in an interview months later, then we'll make sure others have brushes too. And when she spoke those words, her voice didn't shake. It carried the weight of a mother's grief and the pride of a soldier who had finally found peace. Because even though her daughter was gone, her light wasn't. Every painting, every smile, every changed heart was proof. Ariana had won her war, not with fists or fury, but with color, courage, and grace. And for the rest of her life, Maya carried that victory with her like a medal, whispered in her heart every morning when the sun rose. In the same words she'd said at her daughter's grave, "You thought you broke her, but you built a legend." The gallery lights dimmed slowly as the crowd dispersed, their footsteps echoing softly against marble floors. Maya stood alone in front of the last painting, Ariana's Sunrise. It had become more than just art. It was a symbol, a promise, a voice for every child who had ever been silenced, mocked, or made to feel small. The golden hues shimmered under the spotlight. And for a moment, it almost looked alive, as if Ariana's spirit was still brushing color into the world from somewhere beyond sight. Maya smiled faintly. Her daughter had always believed that pain could be transformed into beauty, that every dark night deserved a dawn. And now, as she stared at that painting, she realized something. Ariana had never really left. She was in every child who dared to stand up for themselves. She was in every teacher who chose to protect instead of ignore. She was in every parent who listened, every voice that refused to be silent. The world had changed because of her. And Maya, once a soldier, now a mother carrying her daughters. Legacy understood that battles don't always end when the gunfire stops. Some wars are fought in silence, in classrooms, in hearts. The bravest soldiers are often those who fight without weapons. Outside the gallery, the night breeze carried the scent of rain. Maya tilted her face toward the sky, whispering into the wind, "You did it, baby. You won." A single tear slipped down her cheek, not of sorrow, but of pride. Then, almost instinctively, she took out her phone and opened the page she had created weeks ago, the Ariana Lewis Project. The follower count was climbing fast. Thousands of people sharing their own stories, their own artwork, their own scars turned into light. She scrolled through the comments, one from a mother in Atlanta whose son had been bullied for his stutter. Another from a girl in Detroit who had started a painting club at her school in Ariana's name. Very message ended the same way. "Because of her, I'm not afraid anymore." Maya exhaled deeply, her chest rising and falling with a quiet strength. "This," she whispered, "is what victory looks like." She turned off her phone and looked back one last time at the glowing painting behind the gallery window. The rising sun seemed to pulse like a heartbeat, steady, unbreakable, and in that still moment one thought echoed through her mind, clear and haunting. They thought they'd broken her. Instead, they built a legend. Soft music fades in, gentle piano chords, slowly rising. Voiceover warm, reflective, emotional. Ariana's story isn't just about pain, it's about power. The power to forgive, to rise, to turn cruelty into courage. There are thousands of kids like Ariana out there, kids who wake up every morning wondering if they'll make it through another day of being different. Kids who fight silent wars no one else sees. But together, we can make sure they never fight alone. If this story touched your heart, if you believe no one should suffer in silence, if you believe kindness is the strongest weapon we have, then join us. Subscribe to this channel, share this story, be part of the change. Because the more voices we have, the louder our message becomes. No one deserves to be broken for being different. And maybe, just maybe, when we stand together, the next Ariana won't have to paint her pain just to be seen. Music swells hopeful tone, fading into silence. On screen, white text over soft sunrise visual. They thought they'd broken her. Instead, they built a legend. Dedicated to every child who chooses light over hate. Share, stand up. Let's keep her story alive.